Hello and welcome to the PopCult channel with your hosts Tommy and Tyler. Here at PopCult we love to talk about films, TV, gaming and entertainment news. Join us today as we deep dive into Alien Romulus, the latest release in a series we both love, and decide where it ranks amongst the other films in the franchise. But I guess before we start deep diving into Romulus, we should talk about our relationship to the Alien franchise as a whole. We said in the intro that we both love it, but how much do we love it? How much do you love it, Tyler?
Yeah, it's probably one of my favourite film franchises, even though, I suppose there's only 1 and 2 like seminal movies. And then I think the rest of the films in the franchise have a lot of really good stuff in them, but, definitely don't hold up as a whole film as well as those first 2 do. But I love the world that's created. I love that each film from the sort of original, 1 through 4, is it 1 through 5? Resurrection, is that the 5th one?
It's the 4th one.
4. Yeah, so 1 through 4 in that sort of original franchise. They're all each directed by somebody different who brings a very different visual style and tone to the film. And maybe the plot doesn't change wholly that much in either of the films, but like the tone and style is very different in each one, and they definitely are very unique to each other.
That's a strength, I think, because for me, I love Alien. My favorite one is definitely the first one. Can't go wrong with kind of like a haunted house horror movie in space. That's my favorite. But I can appreciate Aliens for being different, more action heavy. It's James Cameron. And each of them has their own vibe.
Yeah, I think the second one definitely has like more rewatchability.
Yeah.
I think I've probably seen Aliens more than I have seen Alien, but I'd agree. I'd say Alien was more impactful on me the first time I watched it, and is probably like more cohesive. It's a really tight film, that one.
Yeah, it's just perfect. I guess,
Yeah.
In the second one, you have more action set pieces that are more fun to rewatch, while the original Alien is a little bit more of a slow burn where you kind of like wait and see what's happening to these people. And once you already know what's going on and what's going to happen, it's less impactful, but it never lost its luster for me. I think it's a brilliant little film.
It was actually when I watched the director's, like James Cameron's director's cut of Aliens, that I was starting to think actually maybe this one is my favorite, because the director's cut I think adds a lot to the second film for sure.
Yeah, I remember there's a lot of scenes that they cut. They kind of like...
We see that there's a scene in the second one, and this is just in the director's cut. She's back on the spaceship, and she's like having like a psych evaluation.
Yeah.
And we learn that, her daughter's still alive, but she's, like
she's
time
very
has
old.
passed so much.
Yeah.
She's very old now. And so...
Amanda,
that was
right?
And that was like a nice addition to the...
She was the protagonist of my second favorite Alien thing, which was the video game.
Oh, she's the protagonist from that. Okay.
Yeah, the daughter of Sigourney Weaver's character.
Oh, okay.
Amanda Ripley. There you go.
Yeah. Like we said, first 2 absolutely amazing. 3 I really enjoy. Yeah.
You really enjoy it. You really enjoy it. You use the word "really," so I need to know why. Really,
I tell you, I really enjoy the scenes that don't involve the aliens in them. In the third one, I really like the setting. We're on this like prison colony, and she's been picked. Ripley's been picked up, and we have this nice relationship that she has with Charles Dance's character, who's like the medic on the ship.
Yeah.
And then she's also surrounded by like these horrific like murderers and rapists who are like all on working
delightful stuff.
And very David Fincher. And it's that film is let down by I think probably like studio interference a lot. And
for sure. This is early David Fincher. He kind of like rejects this film. Is not part of his filmography, I guess. But it's there's still some Fincher in this, and the stuff that shines through really shines. It's just that it's just weird how they destroyed this in editing and with the special effects.
They had like stop motion. They were using like stop motion aliens, and I think the stop motion ended up looking really bad. So then they did like poor CGI over the top of stop
Yeah,
motion, and it
yeah.
just made the whole thing looked
Which is
awful. And
always a great idea, isn't it? Like in the in
yeah,
the Thing remake, and oh my god. But yeah, like I guess this third Alien movie has one of the most iconic shots in the franchise, which is also referenced in this latest movie, which is Ripley with the big xenomorph face next to her. So yeah, something good came out of it. I should rewatch it. Actually, it's not that bad.
it's if I don't know whether you've got it, but I've got the it's like the Alien anthology box set, and
Yeah.
they all come with loads of behind the scenes, and the behind the scenes of that, I think I was when I first got it, I had like COVID for like 2 weeks, and I just watched all the behind the scenes for all the Alien films.
And that made you more sick, I guess. You were
The
feeling
Alien,
like,
the Alien 3 one's so interesting because yeah, like you said, very young David Fincher, but he's like very candid behind the scenes of talking about his experience, his bad experience of working on the film. And so yeah, like you said, there's definitely some like really good elements to that film.
I mean, it's definitely better than what follows with Alien Resurrection, which I don't think it's really good.
No, definitely the weakest of this of the
Even though,
four.
you have a few good things. Ron Perlman is in it, Winona Ryder is in it for some reason, and every Alien movie has its own redeeming qualities, I guess. But
Yeah, I think like Joss again, like what we were saying, they're very like direct, like auteur driven movies in the franchise, and like Joss Whedon's like ragtag. It's kind of like it's like ragtag band of weirdos is like what he does very well, and I think that's probably the best element of the film.
yeah, true. But the real author of this franchise is definitely Ridley Scott, who returns for the following movies, Prometheus and Alien Covenant. And I remember the experience of watching Prometheus in the cinema, and I absolutely loved that movie, man. Like, that movie was fucking cool. The effects, the story, just the vibe of it, the design of the planet, the way they slowly uncover whatever is going on with this ancient civilization of engineers. I ate that up, man. That movie really, I don't know. On subsequent viewings, it lost a little bit of that magic that you experience, but I still do believe it's one of the better movies, and the kind of criticism that it got, it didn't deserve. Like, people were stupid in it, sure, but it was good.
So overblown, like especially when we were just talking about Electric State before we did this recording, and like give me Prometheus blockbuster with
Oh my god.
characters making silly decisions every now and again over Electric State any day of the week. Do you know what I mean?
100 times, man. Like, it's okay. I can understand some of the criticism, but also let him cook. Let Ridley fucking do his own thing, because the criticism that it got basically led us to a sequel, which is basically just a rethread of everything that they think people like about the Alien franchise, which is Covenant, where they just very briefly touch on some of the unfinished elements in the story of Prometheus, when maybe if the reception was a little bit better, they could have done like an actual trilogy of movies where they explore this thing properly, and then maybe even the things that you didn't like about the first movie start to make a little bit more sense, because
Yeah,
you allow for the story to develop in a natural way, and we get this interesting origin for the alien, which is created by an android which was created by the human. Like, I don't think that's bad necessarily. Maybe you wanted the thing to remain more vague, like the disc jockey, the space jockey, sorry. You wanted it to be a little bit more mysterious.
yeah, but I mean that's the whole like premise of Prometheus is we're going to go back, we're telling an origin story basically, and and if you hate that aspect of it, then you're not going to like the film at all. Yeah, I think it was a very interesting, and it was a tough premise to do. It's like, oh, we're going to go up to space and trying to find
so
the
hard.
origin of man basically. And I think, like you said, this was originally planned to be 2 or 3 film series where we would have got the whole vision of what this was all leading to, but they kind of shit themselves after Prometheus didn't do that well, and they reverted back to this kind of, in Covenant, this middle ground of, we'll kind of explore these religious spiritual themes, but also we'll do the greatest hits from the Alien series.
Yeah, we'll just give you a xenomorph tearing through a ship because that's what you want, right? You just eat that slop. And that's not what I wanted. I didn't want to see a xenomorph, attacking a couple, having a shower.
No, and
or,
also
Danny
if you
McBride with his
pitched to me, do
hat.
I want 2 Michael Fassbenders teaching each other how to play the flute? I'd also be like, no, I don't really
Well,
want to
that
see
was
that
fine.
either. But in the film, that was more interesting than what else was the other things that are happening. So
The David character is
and
definitely the highlight of the whole franchise.
he's the one
for
who
me.
made the xenomorph.
So his relationship.
David made the xenomorphs.
Yeah, and man, it's I wouldn't mind seeing him again in a future movie. I hope they pick the character back up because it has a lot of potential, and I don't know if, because Covenant ends on this kind of like classic Alien cliffhanger. Oh, the danger is not over, and it's David bringing these xenomorphs.
And that little sequence is actually quite cool when he's concealing like the eggs in his throat, and he's like regurgitating these alien embryos, and I was like, this
Again, there's a bunch of good stuff in Covenant too. I'm not gonna deny that. But like Prometheus has a lot of characters making a lot of very stupid decisions.
And Covenant's even worse for that, to be fair. We have our science crew, they get off their ship at this in this extraterrestrial planet, and one of them sparks up a cigarette. And then that's how he gets sick. You're like, this is just fucking stupid.
Like there's some spores getting to his ear. But as I was saying, you have a lot of characters making stupid decisions, but the overarching story is really interesting. The mystery that you create with this structure in the desert, the big statues, and then the interaction with the engineer at the end. Everything is really engaging, except for those characters being very dumb. But then you make a sequel that is trying to fix that problem that people had with Prometheus, and you keep the characters very stupid, even more stupid, as you said, and then you make the story just a random horror, sci-fi with a big monster. And I just don't get it. I don't understand the decision there.
And I like the character of Elizabeth Shaw in Prometheus as well. I thought she was really good. I like
and
the
discount
dynamic.
Tom Hardy as well.
Yeah, he was also really good. I like the whole, even though I think it's the guy, Rafe Spall is the character who makes the most stupid decision when he puts his hand in the egg. But that kind of almost happens in all Alien films.
I mean, someone needs to do something stupid.
Yeah, exactly. But that crew of scientists, I all really like them, and they're all very memorable characters as well, I feel like, from Prometheus.
Yeah. Which leads us to the main subject of our discussion today, which is Alien Romulus. Came out last year, 2024. Saw it in the cinema. You, Tyler, I think you watched it on streaming, right?
I did, yeah.
And so Alien Romulus, new kind of story. It doesn't really follow the cliffhanger of Covenant at all, and it's set between Alien and Aliens. I think the exact year is 2142.
There's a name for this, like a new name for this kind of film, because it's
it's like an in-between quel.
Yeah. I remember somebody had like coined a phrase for it already, because it's like 1.5, isn't it? It's set between Alien 1 and 2.
Yeah, the good bit.
Yeah, so I heard somebody come up with some stupid term for it, but it's just silly.
It's so silly. So this movie follows Rain Carradine, played by the wonderful Kaylee Spaney, and a group of space colonists who encounter a terrifying life form while scavenging a derelict space station. Rain is kind of like the main Ripley character in the film, and she has a very deep relationship with her adoptive android brother Andy. We don't know he's an android at the beginning, but we soon find out, and is probably one of the highlights of the movie, I guess, but we'll get to that. So basically, Rain is contacted by her ex-boyfriend Tyler, who convinces her to join him and a small team of teenagers because they are trying to flee to another planet, and they need the stuff that is kept on this space station that is kind of like drifting away in the atmosphere of their mining colony planet. So they
They
try.
want to go see the sun. That's what
Yeah,
they want.
which, it's a simple and effective objective for our protagonist, especially when they live in such a horrible place
Yeah,
where there's.
I'm pretty sure there is like no sun.
They literally say it in the beginning. You have a little bit of text on screen, kind of like saying where we are, when we are in the alien timeline, and also days of sunlight is like 0 or something like that.
Yeah, I remember that.
So basically they try to, they pilot this ship to this old abandoned space station that is basically just like a in collision course with an asteroid field around the planet. So there's a nice element of a kind of like ticking time bomb. They need to get to the pods that they need to cryo sleep
Yeah,
to this very faraway planet, basically. But of course, being an alien movie, something goes horribly wrong. The space station they board is filled with horrible facehuggers. This facehugger starts running amok and causing havoc and, making an alien movie, or making an alien, I guess. So yeah, this is the premise. We'll go into the details of the story as we discuss it, but I wanted to ask you, what's your overall thoughts on Alien Romulus and the story that we discussed so far?
so I was really hopeful at the beginning. I also was very hopeful from when the trailer came out because I thought the trailer was really good.
Yeah, the trailer was awesome.
Yeah, and really good, and also like knowing Fede Alvarez was attached, and like I think he was working with Ridley Scott.
Yeah,
I
it's
was quite
produced by Scott.
Yeah, so I was quite excited about the prospect of the film. I was like, okay, I thought it was going to be like basically a rehash of Alien One. We were going to go very back to basics, just xenomorph on a ship, but just really well produced and like really good horror sequences. And I was all down for that. And then I think like the first 20, 30 minutes of the film, it's setting up this Weyland-Yutani colony. Like all the production of it's amazing. It literally is like, oh, we're literally back into Alien 1, Alien 2 world right here. And I was like, this is looking like it's going to shape up to be an amazing film.
Yeah.
And then pretty much as soon as I feel like after that first face hugger sequence happens, where they're all slowly walking through the ship, the just originality just drops and drops and drops, and then it becomes we're playing the greatest hits from not just Alien, we're playing the greatest hits from all 4 Alien and Prometheus throughout this story. And again, like we've said we mentioned this about Electric State, there doesn't really seem to be anything original in this film at all.
Yeah, that's funny because I remember telling you this because we briefly discussed the movie when it came out. You didn't catch it in the cinema, I did. And when I watched it in the cinema, it was an amazing cinema, great sound, huge screen. So it was a very good experience in terms of just like the spectacle of it. I was fully immersed in the movie. And as you said, the beginning is so enthralling. This new colony, these new characters. Andy was really interesting from the get-go. This idea of an android who acts like kind of like an autistic kid. I thought Rain was, a serviceable character. I wanted to see more of her. I was curious. I was intrigued. I felt like, as you said, it was a different setup. These teenagers, instead of truckers in space or scientists, it felt fresh. It felt different, but also familiar.
Yeah, and we got a bit of outside world building to the Alien universe, which we don't really get much at all.
Exactly. They're giving us stuff that we kind of like were wondering about all this time. So I was really, really enjoying the experience of the movie. And I remember leaving the theater just buzzing. And then I was kind of like telling you, dude, you need to check this out. It's a really good movie. And then it came on Disney Plus, I guess, and you watched it and you were like, dude, this is not as good as you said. I was like,
I
let
might
me
have
let
even
me
gone as
watch
far
it.
to say, dude, this sucks.
Oh, come on. And so I was like, I guess I have to watch it again. And I did. And the second time around, I noticed a bunch of stuff that really bothered me and bugged me about the movie. And as you said, kind of like after the setup was so intriguing,
Yeah.
it kind of meanders a bit and then falls into the usual trap of just redoing stuff that we've already seen. I still believe there's some originality to be found in the second and third act, because I feel like the situations the characters find themselves in, they are new, they are interesting, and they are using the lore and the established rules of the alien universe in an interesting way. But some of it doesn't really hold up to scrutiny or to logic. And I feel like, again, we have very dumb characters making very stupid decisions for no reason other than, oh, we need the movie to happen. And I guess that's, a curse of this kind of film. But I really wish, they could find a way for it to make more sense. And I hope, I really love a bunch of things in this film. I think Fede Alvarez, as you said, he's a very accomplished director, and visually, technically, this is a very good movie. It's just that, again, I loved it the first time, doesn't really hold up to a second watch because so many things just fall flat the second time. And, as you say, also on the first time for some people.
Yeah, I just found myself like cringing at quite a few scenes, and also just like you said, like when I think when you scrutinize a lot of the elements of the story, it really does fail to hold up, and there's a lot of just plot conveniences and stuff that happens just because we want to reference the black goo, or we want to reference the bitch
I
line
like that.
from Alien 2. I actually didn't mind that they included the black goo. I was very surprised that was
I was
involved in the
pleasantly
story.
surprised, because you feel like, oh, we are doing this new alien and aliens in between. We are kind of like moving away from everything that Ridley Scott was trying to do with Prometheus and Covenant. So I guess we are just not gonna address the goo and everything having to do with David. But no, they reference it, they show it, they use it in the story. So as you said, they kind of like
It's like the MacGuffin of this. That's what is why this Weyland-Yutani ship is so important.
Rook, which is another element that we should discuss. But yeah, like as you said, it's basically kind of like picking and choosing all the cool things and being like, okay, let's just put them together in this movie and people will like it. And I did like it. It worked to trick me into
Yeah,
thinking that it was a good alien movie, just because I was like, oh wait, that's Ian Holm. Wait, but Ian Holm is dead. Oh wait, okay, so that's a CGI Ian Holm. Ian Holm, for those who don't remember, plays one of the androids. Well, the android in the original Alien movie. Ash was his name in the film.
and
And
that was
here,
that's like probably one of the biggest talking points that people had after the film. I remember when I saw the image of him in it, I actually couldn't believe that that's what it was, because it makes no sense, because they've done it in so many of the other Alien films before. He's an android.
yeah,
You
yeah,
could have so easily made that a practical effects mask of his face and caved it in halfway, and just
yeah.
had
So they looks bad. Yeah,
yeah, you have like half of his face is disappeared and he's, talking distorted. It would have been so much better and so creepy, because that whole sequence, I was just like fully taken out of the story. And I'm like, what? What in the fucking Snapchat filter is going on here?
so basically, just to recap, we have this sequence when they finally board and they need to get to this room where there's fuel that they can use to put into the cryo chambers that they are stealing. And as they go through the ship, there's like a collapsed floor and like a bunch of debris, and next to this floor there's an android cut in two. And as soon as they briefly show it, I was like, oh wait, that looked like someone familiar. And then they of course they pick him up, and it's Ian Holmes' character, well, Ian Holmes' model on a different android called Rook.
Yeah, I think a lot of people
Um,
confuse that as him. He was just Ash from the first
yeah,
film, and I think,
well,
and I was confused when I first saw it as well, and I was like, well, okay, that means this is the ship from Alien One.
yeah,
Yeah,
but that made no sense. But no, I got it kind of like immediately that it was just the same model of android, because we've had this before. We had it with David and the other Michael Fassbender
yeah, yeah. No,
android.
it definitely
Um,
holds up.
so it makes sense, and they wanted to use a recognizable face for this role, and I get that, but why? And the funny thing is that as soon as they show him, I was like, oh, that's so cool, that's such a nice little homage to the first movie. And then he becomes like a main character, kind of like a main villainous force in the story, kind of like keeps being reintroduced. Oh, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. And I felt like that was so unnecessary. At this point, you should have done something like you suggested, or just use a different, android model, like a new actor, someone that we haven't met yet. There's
Exactly.
plenty androids. And the funny thing is, in the movie it was so bad, and then I read somewhere that they were gonna fix the effect of Ian Holmes' face for the home release of the movie. And so when I went back and watched it for the second time on Disney Plus, I was waiting for that moment. I was like, oh, they're gonna fix the face. It's not gonna look weird anymore, and it did still look weird.
Yeah, yeah. I
And
didn't, I didn't
so
sense like massive improvements from when I first watched it. No.
no, that was bad all the way. And probably the worst effect in the whole movie, because I feel like something that you could say is almost perfect is generally the visual effects, the practical effects, just the look of the movie is just so on point,
Yeah, which
which
almost
makes
makes
it
which almost makes that more annoying because of
yeah.
how well everything else is done visually. Why? Yeah, why they must have known when they're making that. You're like, oh, this is going to stand out like a sore thumb, and why there wasn't a conversation like, oh, is having Ian Holmes' appearance in this as integral to the story, and it's not at all. It's just it's member berries, and that's all it was, and
Yeah.
it's
It could have been any other Wayland Yutani android trying to get the
yeah.
glue somewhere.
And what's funny is it's member berries for like Alien Romulus did very well like at the theaters. So I imagine it got a lot of new audiences who maybe aren't that familiar with the Alien franchise. That was just a nod to people like us who love the older movies. And it's yeah,
But I guess it annoyed all the older fans. Like, I don't think there's
yeah,
one fan of the older movies who was like, "Oh yes, Ian Holmes resurrected once again just for this amazing role in
yeah.
the
I
movie." I
don't
don't know.
think like the 15-year-old couple who are going to see Alien Romulus on a date as a classic horror movie are going to be like, oh wow, look, it's Ash from Alien
Oh,
One.
wait, isn't that Bilbo Baggins?
Yeah,
Same
it was
guy,
a bizarre
same
choice,
guy.
but it does spark where the story. This is the point of the story that kind of hooked me again. I was in for the first 20, 30 minutes during the setup. When we realize the plan and we start enacting the plan and we get a bit more screen time with our group of characters, it just so many of the characters are insufferable and like one note that it's the film started losing me. And then it was only when we have this Rook, he adds a different chip to Andy's head, and Andy
Yeah.
then switches personality and he becomes like a Weyland Yutani drone. And then yeah, that's when the film started to pick up again, and that was probably the most interesting dynamic of the whole film for me.
Great acting from the Andy actor, really switches completely, like the posture and the speech, the way he behaves. And Rain is taken aback because his little brother, who loves bad dad jokes, all of a sudden becomes this badass android who knows everything about what they're supposed to do, and he becomes the guide through the ship, or space station, I should say. Yeah, I think that whole sequence where they're trying to get back to the ship after a character is infected with one of the facehuggers, right? They have the whole sequence, and then the stupidest character in the film, which is There's something in the water. There's
Oh
something in the
God,
fucking water.
yeah.
That guy, which is understandable how he behaves, but like I think we talked about this before. Like some of the dialogue is so heavy-handed. Like it's so like this guy doesn't like Andy, doesn't like androids, and he keeps saying that every other line of dialogue out of his mouth is just him being like, you're an android and I don't like you. It's an iteration of that.
Yeah. I think
And
I said to you before, it was like very, when I was watching it, it was reminding me of from that Chris from Team America, who hates.
oh yeah,
He just, every line that comes out his mouth is, "I fucking hate actors," and then in the third act we get the reveal that he was raped at the Cats musical, and that's why he
of
hated
course.
actors. And it's like, it's
He was
so
raped by androids.
yeah, exactly. I thought we were going to get a little sob story at some point, and it's so, but yeah, it's done so heavy-handed, and like, we can have obnoxious. We had a very obnoxious character in Aliens 2. We have you have Bill Paxton's character who's like whining for like the first like hour and a half of the film. He's like, oh, we're gonna fucking die, man, like the whole time.
They're coming at the fucking walls.
Yeah, and that's like, I feel like we get more of an arc with his character when he like becomes.
I love that character by the end. It was so good. And then they kill him off in Alien 3.
Yeah,
which you defended. So
and this character just doesn't. This for me, it just came across as really annoying. He's so horrible to Andy. He's just being a dick to everyone. It's like, why is this guy your friend? I actually think he's I think Tyler, the main character, or the
the main boyfriend guy, yeah,
he says he's his cousin. So that's maybe why they have to keep this fucking dickhead around. But
I mean, to be fair, I'm more willing to kind of like excuse this kind of behavior from a bunch of teenagers.
Yeah.
When teenagers act stupidly in a movie, it makes more sense because they're irrational, they're stupid. And this guy, they briefly explain that he hates androids because an android once had to make a decision between saving a bunch of miners or save his mother, and basically his mother died. So there's a reason why he hates these androids, but it doesn't need to be this heavy-handed. Again, it keeps saying it and saying it and saying it, and then at some point it loses all meaning. And when there's the action begins, and Navarro, which is the kind of like pilot, she gets infected with the face hugger, and he rushes her back into the ship. And then there's this whole sequence where Andy and Rain and Tyler need to get back to the ship, and he keeps just insulting this guy. So this is when the story picks up again, because we have the first death, and this is when the ship that they were piloting crashes into the Romulus hangar bay. On the ship, we have another character that we didn't really talk about yet, which is Tyler's sister. She is, we learn, pregnant, which is something that will come into play later.
That's because she is just the pregnant woman.
She's the pregnant woman, yeah. She's really good at being the pregnant woman in the movie. At this point, we basically are halfway through the story, I guess, and the xenomorph is born from this giant vagina egg thing,
which I think we've seen that before in previous films. I don't know whether that's original.
Something similar.
Yeah, like I know, like the alien queen sometimes like leaves behind this residue everywhere that sometimes things form from. But this kind of gets into another issue I have with this one. It fucks with a lot of the biology of the aliens. Like, sometimes especially like the gestation period. Like we have like some characters get infected and the alien pops out like almost fully grown, like 5 minutes later. And also, we also get these new kind of ways where we put things on the wall, and now aliens just naturally birth straight out of these things from the wall. Whereas, like, I always thought it was like the xenomorph was a meld of the face hugger and the human DNA, and it's the birth that comes from that.
Yeah, that's what happens, though. I think,
but isn't the thing on the wall just like a big jelly pussy. It's not like a,
Yeah, that's kind of like the cocoon. We've never really seen, I think. I don't remember if we've seen it before, but basically, so the process is the facehugger infects the host, then the chest buster basically is the first kind of like a stage of the metamorphosis of the xenomorph, right? Chestbuster bursts out of the chest of the, in
oh,
this
that's
case,
it. And then it
and
goes into
then
the wall pussy to
it
grow.
goes, it go exactly, it
Yeah,
goes somewhere, it creates the wall pussy, and then
but
I
that
love that we decided that that's the name.
but that is a new thing.
Um,
I think I don't know whether in any other Alien film they've jumped into something to speed up their process.
I think that in the first Alien, you see the chest bursting scene, and then the little alien, scuttles away, and then the next scene where we see the alien is the fully formed xenomorph killing someone. So we missed the moment of the wall vagina thing,
Yeah, yeah,
which I don't mind, and honestly, I'm willing to excuse these sort of changes, especially like you mentioned, oh, it just takes 5 minutes for the facehugger to create the spore, I guess you could call, inside someone's chest. But again, everything happens in a movie based on the pace of that movie. In Alien, it made sense for them to wait until the morning, so they have the little scene at breakfast with everyone, and everything is fine, and then the horror happens. So in this case, they have less time, so I guess it makes sense. Maybe these facehuggers were experimented on that made the gestation process quicker, or that specific facehugger was quicker in doing whatever it was trying to do. I don't know. I think that's a minor complaint, but
yeah.
I get where you're coming from.
Definitely, yeah, definitely like a minor complaint for me, and it's the kind of thing that if like the characters and the story was all like working really well, I wouldn't even be thinking about. It's just like I think the first film and the second one in the franchise does a really good job of being like, this is the biology of these aliens, this is how they work, and it does. I feel like it does stick to those rules a lot better than they did in a lot of the later
Yeah,
films.
I agree. But yeah, so we have now a bunch of sequences that I thought were really clever. Specifically, one where the characters need to walk through a room filled with facehuggers, which is something that we've never really seen before in an alien movie. And they need to do so while trying to move as slowly as possible and avoid raising their body temperature, because that way facehuggers won't be able to detect them. And I thought that whole sequence was really, I don't know, white knuckling the first time I watched it. Again, as I said, it's one of those movies where a second watch really kind of like highlights all the problems with it, and all the great moments kind of like lose their effect. But I still think that's a cool sequence, and it kind of like shows where Fede Alvarez's mind was at. Like, he really, I feel like with a stronger script, like is making the next one. So I'm pretty sure we're gonna love that one, because with a stronger script and his creativity in creating these moments with the lore and the established rules of Alien, I think this is the kind of stuff that we want to see.
Yeah, that's why I thought this one was going to be really really good, because he's like I don't know whether you have you seen Don't Breathe.
Yeah,
Very like simple. It's so like the first Alien actually, in how simple and
but there's a guy instead of
yeah, the alien is replaced by a blind man who's like who's insanely good at killing people, um, and like that. I think that film's really well made, and like I really enjoyed it, and like the tension is so high in that film, and that's why I thought, hey, this is the
he
perfect
made
match.
the Evil Dead remake.
Yes, which is
Yeah,
also really good.
I think is, and again, he's a good director. The problems that we found in the story were more script based, I guess, because there's a bunch of stuff that just doesn't really work when you look at it for more than 1 second, and especially the references. We mentioned Ian Holmes' character, but that's just one of many moments where you're like, oh, again, they're referencing
Yeah.
this again.
I think we know the most egregious of them all was when I think it's after it's like towards the in the final act. There's the sort of they're doing the playing with the gravity as Rain and Andy are being chased by a xenomorph, and we get a scene where so Andy now gets one of the xenomorphs in his sights. He's got the gun on him, and he's like, "Get away from her!" Pause. It almost looks to the camera and looks at the audience and is like, "You bitch."
And I was like, "You bitch, how dare you!"
And I was fuming. I literally just was like, oh no, it was a massive roll your eyes, like sighing moment. And it's like, oh, is Alien gonna be
Yeah.
that as well?
And
Like,
again,
let's
who's
not.
that for? Because us,
It's
well,
for us.
us, like Alien lovers, I guess, like old school fans who know the lore, who know the old movies, and would understand that reference. I don't think there's many people who will find that
It's for
enjoyable.
that.
Like, I don't know, like who's
Do you know that YouTuber who I can't remember his name, but he cries. He like cried at the Star Wars. What's the first Star
the
Wars like
the Force
the new
Awakens
trilogy?
trailer, yeah, and he was like, "Oh my
Yeah,
god, yeah."
that guy. He would turn to his buddy in the cinema and be like, "Oh my god, that's a reference to this." It's like it's made for those
And
people.
honestly, I not to shit on anyone's parade, but like it doesn't add anything. It detracts from the moment because you're thinking about a better movie, and it's I don't know, it's not what we want. At least it's not what I want from a film like this. And
Yeah, and it could have been a smart callback because he could have just said, "Get away from her," and then left a little pause. And then, like, shot the gun, and then all the
yeah,
audience who know the
feels
callback
that
will
in,
say
yeah.
it in their heads. Yeah, and then it doesn't ruin the moment logistically in the story, and you still can do a bit of a reference to it if
Sure.
you really
But
want
like
to.
new, as you said, like the new fans, new people who are coming into the cinema and watch this, they're not going to care about a reference like this. They're not going to understand it, even though, even if you haven't seen Aliens, you might have heard of this, famous line.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's a problem that permeates this movie because they feel enslaved to the franchise, which is, I guess, Fede Alvarez's way to, show respect for what came before.
I wonder how much of that is Ridley Scott's
Yeah,
involvement and getting his hands all over it. Because especially now, you know, Ridley Scott's name, even just since Romulus has come out, has been dragged through the
yeah.
mud a bit in terms of the films he's made. Like, we've seen he had his hands all over Gladiator 2 and Napoleon, and maybe he was a big part of the issue of Alien Romulus.
Ridley Scott. I was watching a video recently about him and kind of like going through his career and to show like because Ridley Scott is a very competent director, but like recently
Oh
he
yeah,
he has made so many movies. Like he's come out like with one movie a year basically for the past 5 years, and he's always been a very prolific director, which makes you think that he doesn't really put that much effort or thought into.
well, I think now, yeah, definitely in the latter stage of his career.
Yeah, like he's just making stuff because he likes making movies, and he's 80, and more power to him. But I feel like, and I guess we'll talk about it at a later date, but something like Gladiator 2 really shows that he's just making a movie because he wants to make a movie. He's not really thinking.
Did you see did you see the interview with the cinematographer from Gladiator 2, who I think he worked with Ridley on Napoleon and maybe some of his other past films? He came out and said, you know, working with Ridley now is not like how it used to be. Now he's got 12, 15 cameras all on set running at one
Yeah.
time. They're filming everything. There's no attention to detail taken with each scene like I'm sure there probably was back in the day with his previous
And
work.
that is why the quality of the movies he makes varies so vastly from project to project. Because, I mean, I didn't hate Gladiator 2, but it's not a good movie. And there's so many things that just. irk me as an Italian, as like the representation of Rome, and like English writing on the walls in the Colosseum. Like, what are you
They go
doing?
to a fucking coffee shop
Yeah,
at one
there's like
point.
they're reading a newspaper. Like, what's going on? There's sharks. I don't know. Like, man, it's weird. But like then, like a couple years ago, he made The Last Duel, which I thought was a terrific movie, just so well made, so interesting. And not to get away from whatever we're talking about, but his name is more important now than he's actually like what he brings to the table in terms
Yeah,
of the projects
and
that he.
maybe Fede Alvarez had this a bit more of a tight script, and it was a bit more of a remake of the first Alien. It was going to be quite a classic horror movie with teenagers up on this space shuttle, and then Ridley comes along and he's like, "Well, you got to put the black goo in there, and you got to," and it's like, okay, well, fuck, how do I work this all into the story? And maybe that's not the case at all.
I
But
think they worked the goo in pretty well. I mean, it makes sense that it would be there. It makes sense they are kind of researching the alien. It's a very powerful and important asset for them. So, like we get this story that is happening outside of the story of the movie, which I thought was interesting and engaging. And I want to see more of, I guess, this period in time where they're kind of like figuring the alien out. But yeah, it's just bogged down in references and sequences that we've already seen, but slightly different. And I think the exception to this is the last bit, the fourth act, the classic, the danger is not over yet moments of every alien film, which I, for some reason, I wasn't expecting. The first time I watched it, I was like, okay, the movie's wrapping up. We're ready to go. The obvious hint.
did you forget that the pregnant lady had injected herself with the goo?
I didn't, and when she injected herself, I think I thought, okay, so this is gonna come into play later. But I felt like they were almost kind of like setting up a sequel. Like I felt like maybe the movie would end with them getting into the cryo chambers, and then you can see like the lady, she's moving in the cryo chamber, and like she explodes with blood, and like a new kind of monster bursts through, and then we cut to black. Like I thought that's
Yeah,
was gonna
yeah.
happen. Instead, we get this incredibly creepy and weird scene where like you think the danger is over, they're ready to get into the ship and travel to this faraway planet. It's like a 9-year journey that they need to go through, and then the lady gives birth to this weird alien fetus, and it quickly grows into a huge humanoid looking xenomorph hybrid, which I thought was so creepy and so weird and so interesting looking. I was just shitting myself in the cinema, man.
Yeah, it did look great. It did look great. And I told you when I first watched it that had been
You got it
spoiled.
spoiled.
Yeah, I was just on Instagram that I saw the behind the scenes of the basketball player dressed up as the alien on set, and I was like, okay, well, the whole time I'm watching this film, I'm going to be waiting for this fucking crazy monster to appear.
There you go.
And it did. I suppose it spoiled the reveal for me, but I still think that bit was, that's, yeah, like you said, it's probably the most unique element of the film, even though it is kind of riffing off Alien 4
Sure.
Resurrection. When we
Even the
have
way
to,
he dies, definitely. I don't know, man. I still defend that scene, that sequence. I think it's really cool, and it adds a new layer. Like, okay, so what happens with this glue, and like it's kind of like a human engineer xenomorph hybrid thing, and like this
yeah,
just makes my brain just fucking.
it did look amazing. It really did,
Uh,
and I always appreciate, like we mentioned with Alien 3, with the stop motion and the fucking puppets and the CGI over all of that, and they went through the care and attention of finding this like 7'5" like Latvian basketball player to come and do this. And yeah, that stuff, it works so much better when you know that it's physically there in the scene.
Yeah, sure. And it looks physically there. I don't know. I feel, again, really strong ending, and I'm really curious to see what Fede Alvarez does with the next one. Because again, as we said before, he's a very competent director for this kind of movie, and I feel like everything that we have to say against it is just pandering to the Alien fan base and just doing stuff that we've already seen.
Yeah,
Whenever he's doing something new, it's good.
yeah, and I think for the most part, most people really enjoyed it, and I do hope though that this is now the building blocks. If Fede Alvarez is going to be given the next film of the franchise, this, he's proven that he can do this, and now hopefully he can go in a bit more of a interesting experimental direction with the next one, and it's not just like a very similar paint by numbers story again.
Yeah, hopefully. What kind of grade would you give this movie, and where would you rank it amongst the other films in the franchise?
See, I gave it a very I gave it a very inflammatory score when I gave it my initial score on Letterboxd. I think it's got like a 1.5 out of
Oh, dude,
5.
that's too low. Come on.
It it is too low. It is too low, and I'm grading it on I'm grading on a unique scale because I do love the franchise so much. But I think this is, for me, it's a below average film. But I love the visuals of it, and I think it's very well executed. And there's some very good horror sequences. But yeah, I mean, it's just about a 5 out of 10 for me. This,
All right.
and I think it comes from the lack of originality in comparison to all the other films.
So would you put it above or below like a Covenant or a Resurrection?
I think the only yeah, no, actually, no, it's true. I think Resurrection is probably Resurrection and Covenant are definitely my least favorite.
Yeah, me too.
Out of them, and this just sits just slightly above it. I think because it's executed better than those.
Okay, interesting. I would say, if I had to rank all the Alien movies, I would go Alien,
Yeah,
the video game Alien Isolation. I know I'm already cheating, but like that was really fucking cool experience.
Yeah.
They're making a new one, by the way. I hope we'll talk about it. Then I probably put Prometheus, then this, and then everything else.
Yeah, that's fair. I think I'd have it similar. Yeah, maybe 1, 2, then Prometheus, then 3, and then this.
Sorry, yeah, I meant to say Alien Isolation, which is the video game, then Aliens, then Prometheus, and then this Alien Romulus, and then Covenant and Resurrection and 3 are for me kind of like all in the same, even though they all have redeeming qualities. They're all in the same kind of like space for me, like just failures for different reasons.
And I think they've all got better rewatchability. When I watched Romulus for the second time, I found it harder to get through than even the first time, just because the characters are so lacking. And at least in Prometheus 3, I feel like there's way better, more interesting characters in these.
So many movies recently have been like this. Like you watch them and you're like, oh, that was fun, and then a few months pass, and you're like, oh, it's on VOD or it's on streaming now, let's watch it again. And you get to the 30-minute mark, and you're like, when is this movie going to end? I don't know what's happening. Like, I don't know why. Like, I'm usually someone who really loves to rewatch stuff, and it really pays off. Like when it's a good movie, you're like, oh wait, I didn't realize the level of detail that they put into this scene, or like, oh, this is such a cool sequence that I didn't really appreciate the first time around. And then you watch this movie, and it's like everything that was of value you already saw, and everything that you didn't notice the first time around because you were engrossed in the story, now you're gonna notice, and it's gonna bother you.
Yeah.
So what's the point?
I am glad that it did well, though, even though I didn't personally really like it that much myself. I'm glad it did well, so I'm glad that we'll get more films made within the Alien franchise, because I don't think it's a franchise which is like creatively bankrupt.
Of course
loads
not.
of stuff you can still do with it, and there's directions I'd like to see it go in. And and like obviously we've got an Alien Earth TV series coming out later this year,
which we'll cover for sure. Alien needed a win, and this was the win that it needed. I guess we'll see where the franchise goes from here. For now, good, decent movie, but we can do better. Especially Alien as a franchise can do much better than this. But that was all we had to say for today, right? Thank you for joining us. This was our pop cult deep dive discussion on Alien Romulus. Let us know, where do you rank this movie in the Alien franchise? And like we always say, like, follow, and subscribe to keep up with all our video content. You will find podcast discussions, reviews, video essays, and interviews with filmmakers here on PopCult, and much, much more to come. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you soon.
Nice. Yeah, cheers, guys.